Hopefully that's the way you're supposed to do it. I'm Doug Aguilera. I'm CPA, the chair of the Enforcement Advisory Committee. Today is October 6th, 2022. The CBA has provided the opportunity for the public to participate via the WebEx platform. When we take public comments, we will begin by taking public comment from those individuals attending the meeting at the California Board of Accountancy headquarters. I will then ask the moderator to open up the lines for public comment. You will be allowed up to 5 minutes for public comment. I'd now like to establish a quorum, and Ms. Acosta, will you help us with that?
Doug Aguilera. Here. Alan Gittleson.
Here.
Jackson Johnson.
Here.
Kathy Johnson. Here. David Krall.
Here.
Nasi Rossian.
Here.
Jason Russell.
Here.
Jennifer Ziegler.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Acosta. The CBA's mission is to protect consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with established professional standards. This mission is derived from the statutory requirement that protection of the public shall be the highest priority of the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing regulatory and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. The first item on our agenda is public comments for items not on the agenda. There is no one here in this room. Moderator, can you please open up the line for public comment?
Yes, the Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate, click on the Q&A or question mark inside of a square icon and type "I would like to make a comment" in the text field that appears, and make sure you send that to all panelists. No requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. The next item on our agenda is 2A, approval of the July 7th, 2022 Enforcement Advisory Committee meeting minutes. There are a few administrative adjustments or typos that need to be taken care of. But other than that, can I get a motion to approve the July 7th, 2022 Enforcement Advisory Committee meeting minutes?
So moved. This is Kathy.
Thank you. And a second?
Second, Jason Russell.
Thanks, Jason. Any comments from the committee? Moderator, can you please open up the line for comments from the public?
Yes, this is moderator. The Q&A is now open. Instructions will be on the screen. If you would like to participate, click that question mark, type "I would like to make a comment," and send it to all panelists. No requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Thank you. Yes. Ms. Acosta, would you please take roll?
Jennifer Ziegler. Here. Yes. Jason Russell.
Yes.
Nasi Rossian.
Abstain.
David Krall.
Abstain.
Kathy Johnson.
Yes.
Jackson Johnson.
Abstain.
Alan Gittleson.
Abstain.
Doug Aguilera.
Yes.
The motion passes.
to go off script for a little bit. So as you can see, the importance of attending all of the meetings. And at the last meeting, one of the things we did is we approved the dates for the next, essentially now we have the dates for 18 months. So if you can put them in your calendars and then hold them as sacred, it would be appreciated. The next item on our agenda is item number 3, report of the California Board of Accountancy Liaison. We are fortunate today to have Mr. Rosenbaum, a new member of the board and a former member of our committee, taught me everything I know. So if there are any mistakes, you know who to blame. We are lucky to have Joe here with us today. Mr. Rosenbaum, go ahead.
Thanks, Doug. It's good to see everyone. There are plenty of people here that I already knew from either past experience or past time on this committee, so it's good to be back. Anyway, I've got some talking points here for the last couple of meetings of the Board of Accountancy. I'll read through the talking points, but then maybe we can, if you have any questions, let me know, and maybe we'll interject. The July 21 CBA meeting. At that meeting, Jason Fox, Cal CPA's Vice President of Government Relations, provided a presentation regarding entry in the accounting profession. Also, the CBA approved the mutual recognition agreement to recognize the members of CPA Ireland as having satisfied California's examination requirements upon successful completion of the International Qualification Examination. Also, the CBA approved the following legislative amendments for inclusion in the Sunset Review Report. First, the elimination of the mobility stakeholder group, the granting of an individual with a permanent restricted practice order to be approved for a retired status license, the removal of statutory references requiring physical mailings to and from the CBA, and updating the CBA references for educational accreditation agencies consistent with the Code of Federal Regulations. Any questions about anything that the board covered at the July 21 meeting? The only thing I'll say is, for those of you who don't know what the Sunset Review Report is, it's an undertaking that is required by the legislature every several years. I don't know how many years is it? 4 years. Essentially, you have to justify your existence, and so it's an interesting internal review document to put forth all the reasons why the Board of Accountancy needs to be responsible for regulating the practice of accounting to protect consumers here in California. On the next meeting, the September 22nd meeting, at that meeting, and I mentioned earlier that the board approved CPA Ireland for inclusion but we also had at the September meeting, the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, NASBA, the Director of Client Services, Patricia Hartman, provided a presentation regarding the process that NASBA uses for approving mutual recognition agreements with all the other countries. I think now there might be 12, if my recollection serves me correct. There are those that then come and take, or that can take the international exam and then be qualified to practice accounting here in California. The CBA approved a letter to the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants regarding, quote, maintaining the relevance of the uniform CPA examination, aligning the exam with the CPA Evolution Licensure Model Exposure Draft. And what this letter did is agreed that the core and discipline examination blueprints within that exposure draft, based on practice analysis, represent the knowledge and skills required of newly licensed CPAs. And I'll deviate there. For those of you who don't know, the CPA exam is changing to better reflect the skills required of a CPA today. And there is quite an extensive process with putting together blueprints, and then whether that aligns with actually what is required, and the various boards of accountancy provide input into this so that we can get a single unified certified public accountant license examination. Next, the CBA approved modification to the consideration of the CPA Experience Requirements Task Force, also known as CERT. So they approved a modification to replace a member representing consumers to a member from the CBA Advisory Committee and confirm the appointment of Michael Williams, CPA, to the CERT. Mr. Williams currently serves as the chair of the Qualifications Committee. The CPA approved regulatory changes regarding early entry to the CPA exam and directed staff to initiate the rulemaking process. So heretofore, you were not allowed to sit for the CPA exam until you had completed all your educational requirements. And that is changing. There will be, in the future, the ability to sit for the exam prior to completing all your educational requirements, as long as you are within sight of completing it and then actually do complete it within a certain time frame. So this will allow those that are still in college and still studying to go ahead and take the exam while it's still fresh in their minds. The CBA approved regulatory text regarding the sale, transfer, or discontinuance of a licensee's practice and directed staff to initiate the rulemaking process. The CBA also maintained its current position on several bills that were discussed in prior meetings, legislative bills here in California. You can view the CBA website for information on bills the CBA is currently following. The next CBA meeting will be held here on November 17. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenbaum. Any questions for Mr. Rosenbaum?
This is Kathy. I just have a comment. I'm just so excited that the CBA has approved for students to be able to take the exam before completing all of their educational requirements. As an adjunct professor myself, I know how important it is for students to be able to focus and be able to go ahead and take that exam based off of, material that they just finished studying versus having to wait maybe a year later and then starting that review process all over again. So I think that's an advancement for our profession. So thank you to the board.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Rosenbaum? Thank you for being here with us today. Thanks, Doug. Next item on our agenda is item 4, report of the enforcement chief. Mr. Franzella.
Thank you. Good morning, members. So the agenda item 4A is the activity report for the entire fiscal year of 2021-2022. So beginning on the first couple of pages, the complaints received. The CBA received just over 4,400 complaints last fiscal year. And the graph on the bottom of page 1 provides a comparison of the total complaints received as of the same reporting period for the prior 2 fiscal years. Members will see, compared with prior 2 fiscal years, we received a substantial increase, about 92% over the 1920 fiscal year and just over 60% for the 2021 fiscal year. On page 2, members will see graphs of the types of complaints we received, with the graph showing the top 3 complaints for the fiscal year, including the total number of complaints for each type and the associated percentage of that complaint type is to the whole of the complaints received. So our top complaint last year was unlicensed activity, which accounted for just over 50% of the total volume of complaints we received. Moving to investigations and investigations pending. So as of the close of the fiscal year, staff had closed just over 3,100 cases, with 98% of those being closed within the first year or within 1 year. The average days to close investigations was down slightly compared to the 2021 year, down to 97 days. Presently, or not presently, but at the time of this report, staff had just over 2,100 cases in the pending investigations inventory, as well as we only had one case over 24 months, which was actively being investigated. And you'll see that at that time, the average age of our open cases was sitting at 57 days. Moving on to the discipline portion of the report, which can be found on page 4. Looking first at the AG referrals, the CBA referred 34 matters to the AG and had 30 pleadings filed, with the majority of those being accusations. And the CBA at that time had 32 cases pending at the AG's office. Additionally, the CBA took action on 32 final disciplinary orders for the 21-22 fiscal year, with the vast majority of those being stipulated settlements. So looking to page 5, which is the citations, the CBA issued 459 citations last fiscal year, with nearly 70% of those citations being, again, for the minimum yearly CE requirement, commonly known as the 20 and 12. At the bottom of it, you'll see the number of citation appeals, citation and fine appeals. Staff received 74. We had withdrawn or modified 51 of those citations. In most of the cases, the licensee either provide new mitigating evidence that we didn't previously have, or complied with the issue that resulted in the issuance of the citation. So looking now to page 6 and unlicensed activity, the CBA received just over 2,300 complaints regarding unlicensed activity. When you compare that to the prior couple of fiscal years, if you look back to 1920, it's over a 1,500% increase. And when you look at 2021, it's near 400% increase in the volume. The vast majority of these, nearly 95% of these unlicensed activity complaints, are coming from one individual, which involves individuals that do not have an active CPA license issued in California, but maybe holding out as CPAs on a specific social media platform. We were able to close 754 investigations during the fiscal year, with the vast majority of those being obtaining some form of compliance. So the final area, at least as it relates to the activity report, is probation monitoring. We ended the fiscal year with 120 individuals on probation. We identified 70 probation violations, with the majority of those being cost reimbursement and submitting quarterly reports. Those two are tied together. So often are when we see one, we see the other as being a violation. And then on the last page of your report are the accusations and final disciplinary orders from June 1, 2022 through August 31st, 2022. And for members who receive these materials are online, but who also receive them electronically, these are all hyperlinks that you can click on and review the documents that are available on the board's website. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair, and I'll do my best to answer any members' questions.
Thank you, Mr. Franzella. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Franzella?
Yes, Mr. Franzella, this is Kathy Johnson. For the one individual that accounted for the majority, like 95% of the accusations for CPAs without active licenses, there were different CPAs, I'm presuming, correct? Maybe. Can you expound upon how he came across the number of unlicensed CPAs that he made the accusations against?
I presume this individual is just trolling websites and reviewing social media pages for individuals who might be using a CPA license, or I won't say using a CPA license, using the letters CPA, and how that could be potentially misconstrued, or both by the public, but also by that individual who's making the complaint. So,
thank you.
This is Nazi. Do you think some of the accusations that this person is making is frivolous, and is it causing the enforcement group to do some unnecessary work, or do we have an idea of what's happening here? Because the increase is obviously ridiculous.
First, one thing I'll just so the record's clear, the use of the word accusation is probably better served for actual documents that we file. The complaints are what this individual files. We just look at them on a case-by-case basis. I don't know what they look like when they come in, so we have to evaluate them on a case-by-case basis. Some are easily handled. Some are they require extra work on our end. So I don't believe we would ever consider anything frivolous per se, but some have more merit than others.
Thank you.
Sticking with this topic, your favorite, I'm sure. Well, we can all see the increase. Have you all noticed a peak or a decrease, or should we expect this level based on this short period of time to continue? On a personal level, I would hope she's running out of people to find, but that said, it's hard to project. There might be some months where we don't get any, and then some months we'll get several hundred complaints. But again, I would caution members to read too much into this at this particular point. There are ones out there that we're making corrections on, so they are important cases. There are some where I don't believe that there is an issue there, so we can close those pretty quickly. We do have the upside to having so many cases this way. We've had to learn how to create various buckets on how to handle a particular case or series of cases so that we can be more efficient with them. So there is some value there that we've learned how to handle these types of cases and how to evaluate them at an earlier stage to make determinations if they can be closed early, if they require some level of due diligence on our end or actual contact with the individual. So but to the extent that they may slow down or stop, I'm not hopeful at this particular point, but that's fine. If there's actual people out there using the CPA designation or could be construed as having been using the CPA designation, then they need to be addressed and complied with.
This is Kathy. I have another question. I'm sorry, about the same topic. Can you share with us the process? Does the CPA have a process to maybe try and identify some of this type of activity of CPAs or people purporting themselves to be a CPA without having a license? Is there a process without a complaint, without a member of the public having to file a complaint against that individual?
I'm not really sure there's another way to do that. We actually, a few years ago, developed a shorter form for people to report unlicensed activity. Okay. And the only method to kind of get it to our attention is if it's actually reported. And at that point, in order to kind of track the workload, track what we're kind of doing and making sure that matters are addressed, they need to be opened as cases. So at that point, it makes the most sense to just file a complaint.
Thank you.
Seeing no more comments or questions for Mr. Franzella, I'd now like to open it up to the public for comment. Moderator, can you please open up the line?
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. If you would like to participate, click on the question mark inside of a square, type "I would like to make a comment," and send it to all panelists. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. No requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. At this time, we will now go into closed session.